started first place again because we qualified very well. Unlike the past few races, we didn't just drop down a few places instantly. It took half a lap before we started dropping places. And in the past races, we normally drop down to like 5th or 7th sometimes. This time we're holding on to 3rd. You can see that Chicano has pitted in lap 11, so that can potentially be a 4 stop, not a 3 stop. For a 3 stop, we will need to pit at around lap 13. You can see before the pit stop we're 4 seconds slower than Giovanni. After we finished the pit stop, we came out ahead of Giovanni and we were able to hold him up a bit, and we're actually a bit faster than him after that. We made our pit stop 1 lap later than Giovanni, but then that allowed us to gain that 4 seconds. That's why in this game the overcut strategy is always going to be faster, because with the fresh tires and more fuel is always super slow. The less fuel you have, it doesn't matter if the tires are worn, it will all be quicker. You can see the people who are pitting on about lap 19 or so are doing 2 stops, not 3 stops. And the gap we need to beat them is about 45 seconds. We didn't see while we are at the top positions, some of the other people hasn't done their pit stop yet and they're doing a different strategy compared to our free stop. After the pit stop, it looks like we're potentially going to finish 4th, and that's already quite good considering last race we were like 2 minutes slower than the best person, and I think Adriano won, and this time we're ahead of Adriano most of the time. And then the highlight for this race is that Bruno has to pit on the last lap because he accidentally doesn't have enough fuel and had to do an extra pit stop. That's why it's important to have 3 to 5% of the total race distance in laps, so you ensure you have enough fuel to get to the end of the race. And you can see we're behind Giovanni. And Bruno made the pit stop. We actually had enough pace to overtake Giovanni, which just happened then a few seconds ago. Even if Bruno didn't mess up, we would finish 3rd, and that would already be very good. But we finished 2nd and we're super excited about it. Highlighted the top drivers, and if you look at our best lap times, it's 45.9. Andriano, Giovanni and Marek is doing two-stop strategy, but if you look at their best lap time, it's actually faster than us by about 0.1 seconds and 0.8 seconds. The fact that we are able to actually beat them with good raw pace means our driver is actually performing very well. And it's all because we have done aggressiveness training and we are considering our driver to do 2 or 3 mistakes per race instead of doing 1 or less mistake. Because previously with 0 aggressiveness and low risk, our driver makes 1 mistake regardless. Previously we calculated that over a race distance we need about 0.1 seconds per lap in time gained to be even with 1 mistake, which is about 6 to 10 seconds. And then it's quite likely that the higher risk will gain us more than 0.1 seconds because you have to overtake people and sometimes you have to defend, and that takes up a lot of time. Just 1 overtake or defend event will maybe hold you up about 2 to 7 seconds or sometimes even more. Our best lap time is about 0.9 seconds slower than Marek, but we're on the softer tires. So it seems like 3 and 2 stops are relatively similar. And I think it's already quite good that we're only 49 seconds slower than Marek, because all in the past races our driver isn't all that consistent and good, so even 1 second slower in best lap might mean we'll lose even more time than that. The other highlight in the race is that Tomasi did 10 pit stops because he did something wrong with the strategy. You can see Tomasi had done 2 pit stops, and after that he didn't enter anything for the fuel or he entered something wrong. And I've seen for this race Tomasi and Sabrina qualified very late with less than 10 hours left. So that's why potentially with the pressure and the time constraint they made this sort of dumb mistake and didn't put the correct fuel. You can see he pit at 38 and then he pit at 40. And then he pit again at lap 45. And that is because he didn't have anything entered for the fuel values. After 2 pit stop he entered something with very low amount of fuel. You can see for this race, apparently the optimal is doing 2 pit stops. There's someone who did 3 pit stops but they're 27 seconds slower. But at the same time, the best lap is the same as the person who did the 2 stops. It could potentially be their raw pace isn't that good and 2 and 3 stops potentially have same results. But I'm thinking potentially if we actually chose 2 stops, we have potentially gained a bit more time, but we won't be able to beat Marek at all because the gap is too large. You can see Mal has about 0.6, 0.8 seconds quicker than the person above and below him. But then if you look at 7, his best time is only is actually 0.2 seconds slower than the person above and below him. This shows that potentially 3 and 2 stop have the same pace. In some of the past races, what I've noticed is that in the top 100, it's either the 2 or 1 stop or 3 or 2 stop, and we normally wouldn't see the 1 stop even doing as well as top 40 in the pace. If we look at our results compared to our teammates, we are 58 seconds quicker, and that's much more than the past races. We're about 25 to 40 seconds slower last race. Our best lap was 1.1 seconds quicker than Paris. And over the entire race that will be about 55 seconds or so, and does seem to be similar to What shows on screen 58 seconds. So that doesn't mean our driver is all that necessary more consistent than his driver. A shocking moment when I looked at the race results is that for this race we increased our clearance by 2 points, previously it was 3. And then when we look at the race results, we only made 1 mistake, and we're expecting our driver to potentially make 2 or 3 mistakes with the higher risk. And we also did the aggressiveness training to go from 20 to 30 aggressiveness. And we can see our pit stop and the fuel were exactly the same as our calculator tool, and the fuel left from all the stem was just 1%. Our calculation was looking good. We're supposed to do 15, 14 and 13 laps. Another thing I had a look at is the car weight compensation values, and I looked at the 2-3 laps before he pit and the time difference, and you can see that the calculations was that all of the times were relatively similar within 0.1, 0.2 seconds. But then this first stint it was 26 degrees, and the second was 27, and then 28 degrees. But then we're supposed to gain time if it's hotter, because you get more grip and the peak temperature is 31. But then we didn't gain time, so that means we didn't have enough car weight compensation because we were slower throughout the race. So I actually added a bit more compensation for the car weight calculation. Previously we were using 80%, now I increased it to 95%, so that should be about optimum. Another surprising part about the driver mistake is that he made the mistake during the boost lap, and if he didn't do any boost lap, potentially he wouldn't even make any mistake, and that would be just ridiculous. Because in the past few races he only makes 1 mistake. We're going to train our driver again with aggressiveness because we're getting faster and faster. We also know that we need to make 2 to 3 mistakes per race before our pace is optimum and he's pushing hard enough. See, this time we gained 6 points or so in aggressiveness, while the last 2 times in training we gained about 8 to 10. You can see that our driver is losing concentration every race, and if we didn't pick a driver with an age of 40, then he wouldn't lose any concentration, and potentially you gain some sort of stats randomly if his age is younger than 30 or 25. And if that actually happened, our driver would have so much more concentration because we did a lot of concentration training. It might be 130 or 145 now, and that would be a huge difference. So next time in the rookie class, it may not be all that good to choose a driver with too much experience, because normally with higher age and more than 30 to 35 you lose stats every race, and that will hinder the performance. And with the lower stats allowed, it's important to have as much concentration to be more consistent, and we see a driver makes about 0.7 to 1 second of error on average per lap, and will gain a lot of time if he doesn't do that error. I took a screenshot of the car performance points just before this race. Actually it was during the race, because at that time all of the stuff is locked, but you can still see the car levels. But after the race update you can't see it anymore. You can see that our car is only top 4, and it's potentially quite a bit slower than Giovanni, because I don't think we're all that close to having 4 bars in car level. And the fact that we did so well and actually beat Andriano is ridiculous. But another reason why is because that this track is more power based and last track was handling based, so that's why Adriano won last race. And this car is balance type, it has more handling. Another highlight is that Tomas has downgraded his car heavily and he still has debt. He was upgrading and replacing parts before it has fully worn down and he lost so much money. So I think his season is already ended here because there's no way he's going to come back with his car downgraded so heavily and he doesn't have funds to do anything about it and he's hopeless already. And the hit from the staff and driver motivation reducing from negative balance also reduced the performance in the race. Initially our driver was relatively poor even with the fastest car. We couldn't do much and we were like 1 minute slower, but now with enough aggressiveness training, now the driver is quite good, if not one of the best. So that's why we're able to finish second this race. Our roll pace was actually third if Bruno didn't make the mistake. Bruno only has 2 bars in car level, but then he was very quick. We'll have a look at our staff motivation. Before this race it was only 2, and since we finished so well, now it's 6. If you have a look at the achievements that we've got from the start of the season, we can see we unlocked a lot of stuff, mostly due to because we're able to qualify first place. We're always on pole position. Unfortunately for this race, because Adriano finished just behind us, our points only became 2 points closer to him. We still have about 20-30 points to catch up before we can promote. But if we look at the starting position, we can see we started on first place for like 6 races, and we started second place for 1 races. We were virtually qualified the quickest out of 7 races, but then we didn't have enough race pace and we did pole, so normally this doesn't happen. I think another reason why others have a very fast race pace and poor qualifying is potentially because they just make them driver push as hard as possible and they make a huge amount of mistakes. I'm not sure why they want to do that. Maybe because if they push harder after the race results, you might gain some stats. I'm not sure if that's the case. Otherwise, pushing harder might make the driver gain a bit more information about the track and go faster. I don't think either 2 of those are the case, but there's a small chance it could be. Otherwise, they are just very poor with qualifying and they just use too high of a risk. So I upgraded only the car engine because I can't downgrade it only 1 level and the next 2 tracks are power and acceleration based, so we need the engine upgraded to be competitive. Also didn't do any testing because 3 of the other parts are close to full wear after the race and we don't want to replace them prematurely. I entered all of the track characteristic values into the calculator tool. And I've calculated the result to be 1.16, and I know that 1.15 is 1 or 2 stops, 1.25 is 2 or 3 stops, and 1.35 is 3 or 4 pit stops. Last race we calculated that at ground break it should be 3 or 4 pit stops, but in reality it's at 2 or 3 pit stops. And then what I did was I added Singapore, Virunga and Istanbul. Those are 3, 1 and 2 pit stop races. and then I adjusted all the independent values of downforce, overtaking, fuel, and tire wear to get the first variable, and then use the wear, downforce, and the overall power car points of the track to calculate the second variable, and I added it. And we can see the first one we used the tire wear, and then we used downforce, and then we used overtaking, and we used the fuel consumption, and then we added a adjustment variable so that these two are similar. So the size of this is similar to this one, so we get a 50-50 also. Then we use these track values of the other ones and this one, and we adjusted all the values independently until we actually get this 2, 3, and 1 pit stop. It corresponds to that. You can see we use this delta calculation values to see how much difference from each track, how the independent weightings look like. I chose the hard tires because with medium tires we only have 9.2% tire wear left, and then we might have a tire puncture and you lose time when the tire wear is 15% or less. And when we looked at the net time, we only gained 0.3 seconds when going from hard to medium, and that doesn't seem a lot. But medium tires will have less grip when it's worn down, so at 50% wear, the medium tire is going to have much slower degradation in performance, and the hard at 50% has less degradation. And then I chose to do 38 laps and then do 35 laps, so we can have the higher fuel load and start slower, slightly slower, and not get stuck and not having to catch up to others and overtake others. So the less overtaking action we need, the less time we lose. And then because this game, normally with less fuel, even with worn tires, the car is much faster. So always you need to use the overcut strategy to get ahead of others after the pit stop, and we'll be able to get ahead of others after the pit stop because you're pitting late. Then also use our calculator tool for the car settings to calculate the qualifying 2 setup because the temperature is 4 degrees lower. And then we also calculated the final setup, also including the car wear and the temperature difference. And previously the clear risk was 5 for the race we just did, and I increased it by 2 points to 7. Our driver had 31 aggressiveness for the race we just did. After the aggressiveness training we only got 35, only a 4-point increase, very little. And then he only made 1 mistake from a clear track race. So we know that we want to do 2 or 3 mistakes before he's pushing hard enough and the pace is optimum. And 5 points of aggressiveness is too little, so we want to make him push even harder, so we increase the points by 2, so he can do even better in this race. Then we chose to not do any boost laps for the first half, otherwise we just go faster and have to potentially overtake others, and then we'll lose time. So we chose to do the boost lap after the first pit stop. You can see that our qualifying time is quite good, and we are potentially the quickest out of the people using hard tires. Because if we look at Chukas and Bruno, the difference between Q2 and Q1 is quite small because they are using softer tires and less fuel. And you can see that we're not all that off from first place even with hard tires. And the top players, the qualifying time isn't all that good. You can see that out of 2,500, we qualified top 550 and 880, and the overall was 680 qualifying. compared to 5th place, our qualifying 1 is only 2.4 seconds slower, and our qualifying 2 is only 4.4 seconds slower, and that's quite close to the top players, and that means our time is quite good. And after the car updates, our car seems quite good and potentially the quickest because this track is power based and our car is power based. You can see that only Interlagos had a similar qualifying time to us because his car is also similar, and he also, but for some of the races he was quite slow. This time was a bit closer. A lot of our other teammates, the qualifying time isn't that good. They seem to do okay in the race.